So I'm grateful because the Litany, whose territory I have been on for most of my Canadian life, has allowed me to reside on their territories and to also learn and take home culture sharing and also to teach, to work with elders and teach the language nest. 1995 I started the Language Nest, which was the Aboriginal Head Start program that the government had $93 million back in the 90s, and it was discussion for an opportunity for Aboriginal children and families, communities to come together to explore ways of language revitalization, cultural revitalization through traditions, ceremonies, and other practices, particularly the language and the culture, looking at health and healing, wellness, and accessibility for those transitioning from on reserve into Prince George. And so they thrive through that, the social engagement and working, the parents involving themselves, and as part of their healing too, they're the impacts of residential schools themselves. So it was a healing process for them to regain their own identity, their culture, and their own ways of knowing and being. And so that opportunity led to many other opportunities to start another one, which was the Cree and the Métis Head Start program. And then from there it was just build. Well, this year, 2011, was my first recruits from the Aboriginal Head Start program, and they're now attending the university. So I always say to them, okay, I will see you up at the hill. I was actually just supposed to help, but I ended up staying about 9 years later, just because I love the Head Start. It was a wonderful opportunity, and it was also an engaging process for the parents who'd never been involved in parental advisory committee meetings, being afraid, the biggest fear about, going and support your children, and being afraid to talk and to ask questions about education. And so, and much later we see that those who were traumatized and finding new innovative ways to work and to explore, the already understanding and existing knowledge. So that's a big part of what I have been doing in Prince George. Plus, I also teach nursing. And I tell you, when I first started teaching there, I'm going on probably 11, 12 years at UNBC, it was just like, let's give all the crappy courses to Tina Fraser, because I'm sure she'll teach anything. And my great-grandmother, my great-grandparents raised me, all the great-grandmothers, they were born in the 1800s, 1875. And so they always used to say to me, never turn down a challenge. It doesn't matter who's offering you the challenge, never turn that down. And I said, okay then. So when they said, have you ever taught law? Have you ever done this? No, I don't really have a back. Oh, good enough. You're an Aboriginal, you're an Indigenous person, come on board. And I said, all right then. I always promised that I wouldn't turn anybody down. And so, hence why I ended up teaching many courses in the First Nations studies and teaching in health sciences, which was okay. I'm always comfortable in the health sciences anyway. Teaching nursing and education. And my mom used to say to me, I don't understand why you're not teaching in education. What a waste of degrees. You have 2 degrees that ought to be in education. It's just like, yeah, that's right, absolutely. I have to get a real job, Mother, and that's what it is. I've got to apply for this real job, and I think they call it tenure track. So it was wonderful. This is only going into my 2nd year, and Linda was one of the ones that was sitting on a panel. So it was a good ally, and I was very pleased and thrilled. So I want to share Indigenous methodologies, but Indigenous ways of knowing and being. And I want to share that through one of many experiences, one of many lenses, and one of many, many teachings. But actually through this process, looking at Maori, the Maori are the Indigenous people of New Zealand, and there are approximately 450,000, probably 1 million by now. I think when I left, I think they started to increase. So the Maori people are from the Polynesian Islands. And just to give you sort of a background of the Polynesian Islands, we Polynesian people, we start from Hawaii, so Hawaii and the Marquesas Island, it comes down to Easter Island, Rapa Nui, and it comes out to to Fiji, New Zealand, and it goes out to Rarotonga, and so it kind of looks like a triangle. And so it goes Rarotonga, Samoa, Niue, New Caledonia. Now our islands was colonized by either the Dutch people, we have French influence, British of course, and American. And so for example, the States took a big part of our Hawaiian family. In Tahiti, it was colonized by the French, and then in New Zealand by the British, and in Samoa, certain parts of Samoa was half American and half American and half British. And then of course we had, for the most part, in New Caledonia and Niue, again was the influences of the French people. However, our language groups, so talking about our language, which is really important to what I'm about to talk about, because our knowledges, the epistemologies, are very, very similar, similar for that time, that era of the Polynesian people. So what I'm about to share is looking at how tribal identity can be maintained through performing arts. It can be maintained through as a carver or many other forms of art. And so that's what I wanted to share. I wanted to talk about the theories behind that and why I use the qualitative methodology and the importance of our own Maori methodology and methods. And I'm sure you're aware of this cultural sensitivity, the cultural safety piece to that, the competence level of how you work in the community with Indigenous peoples, and that awareness. What it does is this talks about the principles, the importance of looking at my methodology and looking at the way the community shared with me as part of that methodological approach. Is your class quiet like my class? Actually, my classes are noisy. So just to give a bit of an introduction, I looked at the purpose and my research questions. So I know you guys will be thinking about your research questions, and it's not that easy. It starts off this, and then all of a sudden people will say, slap your head and say, think about this, what are you thinking? You know, so bring it back out here. And the theoretical framework and why I use my framework, and my own research Maori methodology, and the analysis and the findings, and looking at sustainability, preservation, sustainability of identity, and looking at from two approaches, the independent, the individual identity, as well as how you move it forward to a collective identity. And looking at my purpose for creating an identity framework that is very, very important, particularly when you are in Indigenous schools, or like in Prince George, we have the choice school, and so identity is a key point for Aboriginal children to be involved with when you're looking at a curriculum, something that can help them. And looking at the valuable teachings that I got, and also what I had learned, and areas for future research. And once I go through this, I am also going to show you a video clip based on this research that is my sub-tribal group as well as my family. It's great when you use family, you know, when you get them involved in your research, because you can always go back to them all the time to say, I think I made a mistake. Is this really what you said? So it's clarifying all the time. You can do that, and it's so much cheaper, because you'll say, by the way, if you are doing something, if you're coming into Canada, you know, pop in or whatever, and they do. So this was my overarching purpose. It was really to articulate Maori. So the Maori itself are the Indigenous people. The Tuhoe is my tribal group. So you know how you have, you know, now there's the Aboriginal, there's the First Nations, there's Musqueam, and then there's you know, another core group. Well, mine is like that. So Maori being from New Zealand, the Tuhoe people were the last to be colonized, and we held on to the language. We held on to the language, and we actually have the old language. Now, but for information, new information is that people in New Zealand, in order for them to become a teacher, doctor, lawyer, whatever, they must have the language. Maori language in New Zealand is national, so they have both languages. However, the trick of the game is that they learn this language, it's a revised Maori language. They learn this in university. So sometimes I have a real difficult time trying to understand. For example, like, you know, my brother, who was here recently, he's doing his PhD, and I have to listen carefully to him because he didn't learn at home. He learned at university. So even though the language is very similar, I have a difficult time understanding him, and he has a difficult time trying to understand me, because certain words were not used as he was growing up. So I looked at that world view of the tribal group through the festivals that we hold bi-yearly, and so looking at the expression, the dialectical, the communication, the socialization, the engagement between the performers, the performing arts, the performativity, those people involved, and the audience, so how they engaged. And with most Polynesian performing arts is that you have to have an understanding of the songs, of the performances, and the language.